Hello, welcome in everybody. We're going to give it just a second, let folks filter in here, and then we will get started. Great to see you today. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Hello and welcome to Childcare Aware of Minnesota's September 2022 Tell Talk. Today, we are joined by Angela Kapp for part one of a two-part series on takeaways from the book From Survive to Thrive, a director's guide for leading an early childhood program by Debbie Lee Keenan and Iris Chin Ponte. Angela is the owner and director of the Learning Garden and Midwest Child Development LLC, and we are very glad she could be with us today. Tell Talks, or Topics for Early Learning Leaders, are monthly webinars for early childhood program leaders to facilitate solutions-focused discussions for your questions about the early childhood field of Minnesota. These one-hour webinars do not meet the standards for a formal professional development training event, and participants will not receive a certificate of completion. Tell Talks are designed as a community building opportunity for leaders to engage and discuss a specific content area. The Tell Talks team consists of Nikki Lepowski, Quality Improvement Coordinator, and myself, Christy Berg, Workforce Advising Coordinator. We work with Corey Woosley and Katie Hoffman at Childcare Aware to bring you Tell Talks. A couple of our recent topics have included using Teach scholarships as a retention tool and implementing anti-racism and anti-biases in your program. Next month, Angela will be back with us for part two of the series on Survive to Thrive. Please visit the program leaders page of our website to view previously recorded Tell Talks. After today's presentation, you'll receive an email with the PowerPoint and any other resources shared. What is Childcare Aware of Minnesota? We support the professional growth of early childhood educators with professional development opportunities, eager to learn online training, grants, parent aware, and scholarships. We are a resource and referral network for early childhood education in Minnesota. We assist families in finding a quality childcare program and keep the community informed on the importance of quality childcare. Childcare Information Services is a department within our organization that specializes in statewide information sharing and assisting families who are looking for childcare. CCIS sends a welcome packet to new programs and surveys programs every 3 years on business policies and tuition rates. The rates are confidential and can influence CCAP reimbursement rates. CCIS receives calls from program leaders across Minnesota with general business questions, and they can route you to the appropriate person to contact. Childcare Aware partners with Center for Inclusive Childcare, which provides free relationship-based professional development, including support, modeling, and resources for childcare programs in Minnesota. A coach will spend time with your program, providing support focusing on the successful inclusion of children with challenging behaviors or special needs, implementing health and safety best practices, and information on inclusion and health and safety for infants and toddlers. Achieve, the Minnesota Center for Professional Development, supports individual, trainer, and RBPD membership applicants and approves courses and training events. The Achieve MNCPD website has several resources to share, including a free job board, policy info, Minnesota Career Lattice, and a virtual career guide. The Tell Talks team partners with several organizations to offer coordinated resources surrounding early care and education needs. As always, participants of Tell Talks are encouraged to ask questions, make contributions throughout the presentation, and engage in dialogue with our presenter. We like Tell Talks to be interactive as much as possible, so we'd love it if you felt comfortable to turn on your camera and unmute to share questions or ideas. And you can also put your questions or comments in the chat box at any time. And we are recording the Teletalk today. We'll send a link to the recording in our follow-up email. And now I'm excited to turn it over to our presenter, Angela. Thank you for being with us here today. I will stop sharing so that you can take over.
Okay, are we good? Everyone can see my PowerPoint?
Let's see, not yet.
Oh, uh-oh. We thought we had this down, didn't we?
And now I see your notes.
Oh boy, here we go again.
Flop. You got it.
We practiced.
I know, I think you clicked display settings up at the top before.
Yeah, but saw with my dual screen, I can't get to the one on the other screen. So somebody give me a hint. All right.
Let's see, if you have PowerPoint on your main screen, what happens when you click on the presentation mode? Where does the presentation screen end up?
I think I found it. Okay. No. Display, there we go. Better? No. What do you see, Nikki?
We can just, yeah, that's okay. We can just see the videos of our participants. So you'll have to click on share screen one more time.
Oh, that's where we went. Okay, you guys.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And if it gives you an option, that's all right. If it gives you an option to select where you're projecting to. Now see what happens when you click on slideshow mode.
Yep, here we go. How's that?
You know, we can, oh, there it is. Yep, perfect.
Okay.
You got
All right. So, sorry, everybody. Thanks for your patience. Hi, I'm Angela Kapp, as Christy mentioned, and I am the owner of the Learning Garden. We have 2 locations, one in Maplewood and one in St. Paul. And under the umbrella of Midwest Child Development, I also do training and consulting. So many of your faces are familiar to me as I'm out and about in the early childhood field. I've also spent a great deal of time as a NAEYC assessor, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. But I took my first director's position 26 years ago, I figured out. That was when my youngest son was just an infant. And I opened my own center about 10 years ago. So it's been 10 years now. And before that, I also spent some time at Head Start as an education manager and managed 2 programs in this Kapp RW out in St. Paul. So I'm excited to be here with you today. And when Corey and Chrissy approached me about doing a session for fall on gearing up for fall, what directors need to do, I had to think back to when I was a new director, and what helped me along the way, what helped me get ready. And I had a lot of resource library. I love books. Many of you, I'm sure, can share that I love books. So I started collecting books on directing. And one of my first books was actually The Visionary Director. And I just really liked reading through those books to get inspiration. And a few years back, I got this book, From Survive to Thrive. And I thought, isn't this fitting for our time right now? We're all trying to survive, right? Between staffing shortages and COVID and everything that we're trying to accomplish. So I thought this would be a great book to use for the session today. So you can see the cover there. You can purchase the book from NAEYC. If you are a member, you can get it for $22.40. Non-members are $27 or $28. You can also find it, I think I found it on Target and Amazon for $27. So it's an easy read. It's nice short chapters. So you could maybe do a little chapter over lunch or something. I know all of us like to work during our lunch breaks. But But I wanted to really just kind of go through the book and highlight some of the things and share with you some of my experiences and failures and successes as a director. It's not an easy job. And most of us didn't start out wanting to be directors. We kind of fell into it. And maybe someone said, hey, this would be, I know what my experience was. My director said, hey, I think you would be great. And they transferred me to a new location as the assistant director. And that was my first experience. I wasn't thinking that was going to be my career. So you'll notice that a lot of these resources I use today, to include the NACCE Code of Ethical Conduct and the Anti-Bias Education for Young Children and Ourselves, are from NACCE. And the reason why I focused on NACCE resources is because NACCE has always been close to my heart. I was an assessor for many, many years. And when I was first starting out as a director, I had a supervisor who wanted to get, he was an owner, and he owned 8 or 9 programs in the Twin Cities here, and he wanted to get them all accredited. And so he encouraged me to find out more about accreditation, and I became a volunteer assessor. At that time, they called them, I think, validators. And I ended up going from a volunteer to full-time within a pretty short amount of time. And so for a few years, that's all I did. So over the past, 20 something years, I think I visited over 500 programs that are seeking, that were seeking NACCE accreditation. So that allowed me to see how things are done in a multitude of ways. I got to experience faith-based programs and culturally specific programs like Somali-based, or Montessori's, or Head Start programs, pre-K programs. So I really got a really nice understanding of what was going on out in the field, and not just in Minnesota, but also across the country. I got a chance to go visit a program in Hawaii where all the kids were running around with no shoes in the sand, no shirts and shoes from Minnesota. That was like shocking to me. And I really just got an understanding of what accreditation can do for a program. And I'm going to speak to accreditation a little bit later because I'm going to share a secret with you about my program and accreditation. But I just wanted to kind of give you an overview of where this came from. Does anybody have any questions or comments right off the bat? Anything in the chat I should be looking at?
I don't see anything in the chat.
Okay.
Thanks, Angela.
Okay. All right, we're going to move right along then. So I took I split the sessions up into 2 sessions, and this session, we're going to cover these chapters. What it means to be a director, we're going to really kind of start off with, and then talk about our program context and cultures. And then, like I mentioned before, talking about accreditation that's related to program quality, a little bit on budget and finances, and by all means, I'm no expert. And we all know that that's not why we got into directing, was to handle budget and finances, right? That's probably your least favorite aspect of your job if you have to handle any of that. Staffing is probably our most challenging, and then managing enrollment. So those are the ideas that we're going to cover today. And then hopefully you guys will sign up for part 2, and we'll go over assessment, curriculum, working with families, and I added a little feature on partnerships and collaborations. So what does it mean to be a director? I love this flip art just because I think we started out as teachers, right? And even as a director, you're still a teacher. You might still be going into classrooms. You're working with training and teaching adults, maybe even some parent education. But we also take on the role of maybe IT specialist or janitor or plumber, therapist, counselor, detective, right? So those are just some of the many hats that we wear. So some programs, and I'm not sure, it's gonna be hard. We have a large group, so I can't go through and have everyone introduce themselves, or we'd be here all day. But I'm just kind of curious if you want to put in the chat what kind of program you're from. Like, are you part of a chain? Are you individual? Are you individual program? Are you part of a larger corporate center, that type of thing? Just so I get an idea. In home, I see that as well. And so you're everything in home. And so, yeah, so sometimes organizations might have other people to split up duties. So for example, when I was with Head Start, I didn't have to deal much with HR or hiring because they had someone else that did that. I didn't have to do much with finances because they had someone else do that. But when I was in the corporate franchise centers, I had to do a little bit of everything. So we'll talk a little bit from that perspective, from my perspective, but I really encourage you to share and share your experiences and ideas throughout the presentation today, because we all will learn from each other, right? That's what we need to do in order to survive. We need to have those people that we can go to get advice, to get feedback, to get ideas. And sometimes if you're a family provider or a single center owner, you might not have those people to connect with. So we have each other. Okay, so anybody want to give some other thoughts to what you feel as a director, what that means to you? You can either turn on your camera and say something or put it in the chat. What does being a director mean to you?
While folks are typing, I see quite a variety of different program types represented in today's
Yeah.
Talk.
That's exciting. Well, while you guys are thinking, if anybody wants to chime in, I'm going to move to the next slide, but feel free to chime in or type something in the chat. So the director is both a manager and a leader, and that's what the beginning of the book talks about, and has the relationship between managing and leading. And so I can remember my first role as director. It was all about the tasks. It was doing the breaks, collecting the tuition, running to the bank, doing van runs. And if you're not familiar with van runs, picking kids up to and from school, right? I had very little time for leadership. I gained experience over the years, and I feel like I've become more of a leader. But when I first started managing or directing centers, it was all about the tasks and just making sure I got everything done by the end of the day. Now, when I opened my program 10 years ago, I was really able to kind of hone in on what I wanted to be for my staff. I had given a lot of thought to what an owner should be through all my different experiences working for others. And I was able to practice and leading, practice leading and managing over the last 10 years. And to the last 5 years is really only when I feel I've gotten a little better at letting go, maybe delegating, dealing with, somebody mentioned parents in conflict. I didn't like conflict. Well, nobody really likes conflict, right? But conflict was really hard for me to deal with. So I feel like I wish I would have had some additional resources or support when I was first directing. Nobody kind of carried me along or helped me out. They just kind of put me in the position and said, here you go, figure it out. So here is an excerpt out of the book where it shows the Venn diagram of how managers and leaders overlap, or directors overlap into managers and leaders. And so, for example, directors focus on efficiency and effectiveness, not one or the other, where managers might just need to get it done and leaders want to get it done effectively. So an example I can share with you maybe is you want something to happen in the classroom, and so a manager might just do it quickly because they know they have the skills and the resources to get it done. And a leader might encourage the people that they work for to take their time and try the task, and they might get it wrong and they'll have to do it over or update it. But it's really about providing a little bit of both. There are tasks that need to get done, but we also need to be effective in getting our staff and the people around us to really understand the why, right? To understand why are we doing it this way. I could go around and micromanage and do things for people all day long and feel good, like, oh, this is just how I want my program, but it's not authentic. My program won't develop a culture and maybe a personality if it's all me. It has to include everyone else. So yes, and I agree. I love this diagram. It really helped make me think about what's the difference between managing, leading, because we all know leaders in our lives, right? Those people that inspire us. There's a few of you on here that I see that inspire me throughout my educational career. You guys are leaders. But when we're working in a program together, your employees really need the most of that, right? They need somebody to lead, and they really need somebody that knows how to manage. All right, so I want you guys to take a minute to think about those people that you've admired most, right? And what did you admire most about them? Did you like their organization skills? Did you like the way they handled conflict? Does anybody want to message or speak up to something that they really admired in one of the leaders in their life? Yes, allowing to take risks. Yep. I can tell you a little bit about what you guys are thinking, or if anybody wants to chime in, that there have been a few directors or supervisors that I've had that I really admired. One of my first ever supervisors wasn't even in the field of early childhood. It was when I worked retail, and he knew that I didn't need much guidance and trusted me. So, and I liked that. I liked that he trusted my ability to get the job done and didn't micromanage me, didn't check on me, didn't make sure I just got the job done. So I really enjoyed that about him, that it really taught me to be able to problem solve on my own and figure things out. And I didn't feel like I needed to call him and ask permission all the times to make changes or put something a certain way. And so I really, really liked that. I also had someone who was very patient and kind of almost not really emotional, but very, very stable with their emotions. And I love that because I knew what to expect. I knew that when there was a situation or a problem, that this person would remain calm under pressure. And so that really encouraged me and helped me know that I could come to them and it wouldn't be, oh my God, I can't believe it. It would be, okay, let's figure this out. So I'm reading some in here. Let's see. Open-ended questions, clear expectations, respectful of other people's time. Yes. Trust. Yeah. Excuse me.
Angela, there's a comment in the chat about giving autonomy and freedom to try own ideas, which is, I think, touching on what you just said. And trust has been mentioned a few times here.
Yes.
Trying to see situations from multiple perspectives and creative solutions.
Yes, all of that. Are there any qualities you disliked?
Can I just add on? Oh, I'm sorry. This is Brenda.
Go ahead, Brenda.
Hi. I just wanted to add on to that. I think that the not micromanaging, which is actually answering this question, but that allowing you to make a mistake and that it's going to be okay. It's like having a computer and making a mistake, but you didn't just wipe out the entire system and we're going to figure it out together. Like having that moment so that you can keep growing. It's like, because that's how you grow, is by learning and making those mistakes and tripping and falling. And so when you have that leader that allows that, it's like such a breath of fresh air. And then they're still not in a position where they feel like they need to hover over you, because then it almost like sucks the air out of the room, at least for me.
Yeah.
So I just had to throw that in there.
And what came to mind when you were speaking, Brenda, is judgment. Like, right? Like I always feel like if I make a mistake, I'm being judged, just like today, I'm having a technical issue. Am I being judged? Like, come on, weren't you on it? Didn't you get it together? Like you guys allowed me to make a mistake and I'm going to learn from it and know next time. Now I'm going to know exactly what to do. So that's the goal, right? If we just go in and fix everyone's problems for them, they aren't going to be able to learn and be able to do things on their own, just like with children. And we'll talk a little bit about that parallel here in a little bit. Any other comments or anything coming through the chat?
There's some comments regarding the qualities that you've disliked.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Let me see. Undermining decisions. Okay. Favoritism. Yes. And boy, did I learn as my first job as a director, I was in my 20s. And I have a little story about when you are a new director, sometimes you are coming out of a position where you were a peer with now people that you're supervising, right? And that can be a tricky situation. And I had some suggestions for I think my assistant director's on here somewhere today about that when she was going through that, coming out to be somebody who you used to work with and now they work under you can be a little tricky. And favoritism can happen in a couple different ways, especially if you are close to that person. And I used to have people that would come and hang out in my office, and other people viewed that as favoritism. And what I learned later on, it was only years later that I really understood what was happening, was that person needed connection or people, and they would come and rather hang out on their break than maybe go home or sit in their car or do whatever. And so I just had to make sure that I was very clear what that person was doing in my office. They weren't coming to like tattle or tell what was going on or gossip. They just wanted that connection, especially after working maybe with babies all day who aren't communicating with you, right? So sometimes favoritism isn't always favoritism. It's maybe a relationship building, but it might look like favoritism to others. Yes. Ignoring problems, yeah. And that's that whole idea of the addressing conflict, right? Because that can be really scary for some people. So that takes practice. Any other thoughts on your either identifying your own leadership traits or traits in others? It was really something to think about. In the book, they talk about, really reflecting. I think a lot has to do with temperament, but are you outgoing or more reserved? Do you like to work as a collaboration, or do you need do you like to be a little more authoritative? How do you get tasks done? What's your method and madness for that? Are you flexible? Do you make decisions quickly, or do you need time to think on those? Are you open to new approaches? So those are all things to think about yourself as a leader and a director.
Angela, just a quick heads up, we're at about 1:30 right now.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I don't know. We might have to squeeze some of this into part 2 because I got to move a little quicker then.
That'll work.
So all right. So I mentioned earlier that I wanted to just kind of show that parallel between guiding children and guiding adults. And you'll see in these areas are the ones that they talked about in the book. But yes, there's definitely some parallels in the fact that you need to build relationships with your teachers. And sometimes that's been hard for me because I have been with people so much in my life that sometimes I'm almost afraid to make relationships now with my teachers because they might leave me. And I know that sounds silly, but we have turnover in our field, right? And I get attached to those great teachers, and then I'm happy for them when they find something else or they take a new step in their career, but it also leaves me feeling like I've invested a lot of me into them. And so I've had to work hard at making sure that I still work on those relationships, that I still check in with people, find out what their likes and interests are, learn about their family, just really take the time to get to know them. I recently had a parent ask me about a teacher's favorite thing so that they could get them a departing gift. The child was going off to kindergarten. And I realized I don't know that teacher very well. I don't know what she likes to drink. And so that just clued me in that I need to spend a little bit more time working on that relationship. Skills. So we know that children are somewhere on the developmental continuum with their skills. So are our teachers. And when we have people come aboard, we kind of let them know that we understand that everyone they're all somewhere on the continuum depending on the skills. So we will help you get there. We're not expecting you to know and do everything. And that's important to remember. And sometimes I think my assistant and I sometimes go, where's the common sense? Maybe some of you guys have seen that where you're like, I don't get it, but they just might not have those skills. And that's something we might need to teach. Also things like expectations. So we know that if we don't give children expectations in the classroom, you're going to have some challenging behaviors, you're going to have some chaos. And so we need to do that with our staff as well. We need to let them know what the expectations are, and they have to be consistent in our program. If myself and my assistant director and maybe my education coordinator or my husband, who's also a part owner, comes in and tells the staff to do something differently, then the expectations become muddied. So our leadership team needs to get on board first. So if you have a team, you're working with a co-director or an assistant director, you guys need to be on the same page too for expectations, right? Another thing that we talked about this already, but conflict, like how we want teachers to deal with conflict. We want to teach children to deal with conflict appropriately. We need to teach teachers to deal with conflict appropriately. So we can't always go in and solve their problems. We have to maybe encourage them to seek out conversations, to look at other people's perspectives, to have dialogue. And so that's another skill that might need to be worked on as well. Self-sufficiency is another one for me. We've all had that employee that seems to be very needy. They constantly need supplies or attention or praise or rewards. And sometimes you can start to feel like, oh, what's going on? And sometimes if you just give them some tools, like, I just want to let you know that, come up with your list, and then maybe right before you go on break, come and approach me and we'll go through your list together. Find some solutions so that you're not feeling bombarded by this person, but they also can get some self-sufficiency. They can also figure things out on their own. Thoughts, ideas? Okay, I'm going to move to the next one then. All right, so set yourself up for success. So this is, or I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong slide. The intentional director. So we've all heard of the intentional teacher, right? And so we need to be intentional directors. We need to think about our time management. We need to think about our decision making. We cannot be afraid to lead. We have to lead with vision and purpose. And so this book has a nice little chapter on that, on clarifying your vision and mission for your program. So if you're coming into a program that you don't own, or that has been there or has a lot of history, you might need to do some research and think about what the vision and mission is, and has that changed? And does it align with your vision and mission as a director or an early childhood professional? Give yourself permission to lead. You have to strike that right balance, right, between good management and good leadership. And that's going to take time and practice. So don't beat yourself up if you make mistakes. I have made so many mistakes. It'll take hands, right? But I have recognized that, and I've learned from them. And then you also have to recognize what you have control over. So there are a lot of things that we just do not have control over, and you have to let that go, and that can be very hard. All right, so here's setting yourself up for success. So my biggest spiel is protect your time, okay? Time is precious in our field. We don't want everybody working 12-hour days. We don't want people coming on the weekend to get things done. You need to really figure out how can you manage your time so that you feel like you've accomplished something that day, and also so that you're not stressed and getting burned out, right? So some strategies that we've done in our program. So one of the first things we did was a few years back, we moved everything to cloud-based. So all our forms and documents are on the cloud. So we all have access to them. And when they're updated, you can see the dates that they've been updated. We've also, all the children's files and staff files moved to the cloud so they can be accessible. We do a lot through Google. So we have used Google Calendars. Google also has Google Keep, which is like a to-do list. We use it for everything from listing projects that we're working on, so everybody kind of knows who's doing what in our organization, to supplies. Do we need baby formula, baby food, whatever it might be. So that's been a great feature for us. And then making sure you have a good childcare management software. That's really important. And there are a variety out there. I'm a fan of ProCare myself. It's for one of the first programs I've used, and I've loved it, and it's very easy to use. And but there's Brightwheel out there. I think Easy Care. There's just a number of different programs that you can use, but find a system that works well for you, that kind of, you know, if you're entering things in one thing and then you have to enter it in another thing for accounting and QuickBooks and here, that's time. That's time that you're wasting. So if you can figure out how to lessen the steps, right? And then I would say pick your top 3 things that you need to get done for the day. So when I come into work in the morning, the first thing I do is I clear my email, and my goal is to never have anything in my inbox. So I go through my email, and if it's something that I don't need, unsubscribe to all those emails that you keep getting. You don't need to see those all the time. And then I have folders. So if I have something like the Zoom link for a future event, I put that for the future. If I have something I want to keep for reference, oh, they gave me some policies on CCAP on absent days, and I want to be able to look for that, put that in another folder so that not everything's sitting there looking overwhelming for you. And if it's something you have to get done, a parent sends you an email and says, can you get me this statement? Just do it right away. Get it off your plate, delete the email. And that's my biggest advice, so that you don't have all these emails and it seems overwhelming. So I just spend a few minutes, 5-10 minutes in the morning, clearing off my emails. My next step, figure out the day for the scheduling, right? How are breaks and staffing going to go? And then that allows me to know where my time frame is for working. So now I know, okay, I'll have to start a break at 11. So now I have from 9 until 11. What's important there? My top 3 things. Oh, I wanted to do a classroom observation. I wanted to update some policies and procedures. And I wanted to email this family back that was looking for care, right? So what's on the priority? Well, I know that the best time for me to observe in a classroom is probably in the morning, right away at 9. So I'm going to do that first, okay? And that, getting that done and out of the way, then I can breathe and go, okay, the other ones are simple tasks. I can get those done. But we tend to put off those things also that we don't want to do, right? And save those. And if we can get in the habit of doing the yucky thing first on your list, you'll feel much better. Does anyone have any other suggestions for kind of setting yourself up? I know there must be a million. Nothing in the chat right now?
Nothing right now. Thank you.
All right. So then we're going to keep moving on. This next chapter talked about your program context and culture. And so I think it's really important that you understand the culture of your program. And to do that, you need to do a variety of things, right? You need to spend some time really analyzing your program and gathering some information. For example, how did your program come into being? What's the history? What makes your program unique? What are your resources? If you're on a college campus, you have access to professors and resources and trainers and college students. If you're at a faith-based program, do you have access to donations and extra conference rooms and things like that? So what do you have access to? And then what are your program strengths? What's great about your program? Do you have staff that have been there a long time? Do you have longevity? Do you have a nice facility? Do you have secured entry? Do you have, so really come up with like, what are your program's core beliefs? And for me, in the spaces that we've been in, and I've opened 7 centers in the last 10 years under the Learning Garden umbrella. We are down to 2 because I've sold a couple and then we left spaces that were not a good fit for us. And then we had a couple closed during COVID here where staffing was kind of challenging. But what I've learned from those times is that sometimes we have to make do with what we have, and that can be a struggle. So we have to figure out like for example, one of my programs has built-in shelves everywhere, and it's really hard to find a wall, just a blank wall, right? So then we have to be creative. How can we make that work for us? So based on the values of a program where we believe things should be done at children's level, where they can see it, how does that match? So really kind of think about, that with your program about, what is it about your program that's special? And why do we need to know that? Because we need to talk about the culture and the climate of your program, right? Bloom outlines, I think, 10 dimensions, and I don't know if I can get it in the chat right now, but I was going to do the outline, but of make up an organizational climate, right? And 3 of the first ones are supervisor support, goals of consensus, and innovativeness, right? And can you believe that supervisor support is one of the top reasons why people leave their job? right, if they don't have supervisor support. So that culture and climate is really important to retaining staff. And I know that firsthand. When our culture or climate has been out of whack, we have a lot of staff turnover. Right now, we're in a very stable place and we haven't had a lot of turnover. And I feel that our culture is very strong. People understand why we do things and why we believe the things that we do. And I feel like that has impacted the feel of our program. People are happy when you come into the building, teachers are singing and children are laughing. And that's not always been true. So you have to really think about the culture and climate of your program. All right, how are we doing on time? Okay. So risk-taking, reflection, and growth. Somebody mentioned risk-taking earlier. I have been a big fan of reflective practice for the past few years. I believe that that's like one of the most kind of simplest things that you can do to really improve your practice is just reflect. And it doesn't have to be fancy. We provided notebooks for all our team members at one of our all staff trainings and just encourage them to take 5 minutes before they sign out for their shift, just to write down a few things about their day. What worked, what didn't, how did you feel about the day? Maybe even, were you able to leave your home stuff at home and come into work fresh? Or was there a particular child that you were really struggling with? And then they can use those reflections when we meet for one-on-ones or coaching sessions and things like that in our program. So having that reflective practice has worked for me as well as a director. Like, how did I handle that situation? Did that go the way I wanted it to go? What could I have said differently to get my point across or to help them learn? So we have to kind of think about, do we model reflective practice? So I try to model that. Do we create safe spaces for conversations? In our program, we have lots of shared office space. There's not a whole lot of privacy. And so we have to be sure that when we're having a private conversation with staff, that we find a place to have a safe place to have a conversation. Active listening. That is one of my hardest. I really work on that because my brain is going when people are talking, like making connections. Oh yes, and I want to interrupt and share. And that has been really something that I've been practicing on a lot lately, is just doing some active listening, just really sitting back and going, what are they trying to tell me? And then paraphrasing, okay, making sure I understand what they were trying to say without making assumptions. And then just be honest. If you don't have the answer for something, let them know that. I really don't know. I'm going to have to look. Somebody asked me the other day, can we give babies juice? I don't know what the mom brought it in. We didn't want to do it, but I don't know. Can we? Let's look at that. And so we had to look that up, and I could have just said nope and said that's our policy, we're not going to do it. But let's really look at that. Can we meet that parent's request? And then at the end I put value all questions, and then I added and responses. Yes, stay curious. And the reason I say responses, because there have been many a times during like a training or a staff meeting where somebody says something that's just a little not quite where we were going. And I don't want that to appear on my face. So I have to value that they were contributing and engaging. But I make a mental note that maybe I need to take some time with that person and maybe explain something in a different way, right? All right. So the next section in the book was talking about achieving and maintaining program quality. And I mentioned earlier that I had a little secret about accreditation. I only got my program accredited the first year we were in business. And after that, we have not done that. And even though I'm passionate about accreditation, the only reason we were able to get our program accredited the first year is because we were part of that accreditation facilitation project. And I didn't have the funds as a small business owner to pay for accreditation. So it is expensive, but I think it's worth it. The fact that I was an assessor and I knew what I was looking for, I've incorporated that into our policies and procedures and our expectations. So that's where I feel like I can get away with that a little bit more. But it doesn't look good, right? Then an assessor never got their program accredited. But I do believe highly in quality rating improvement systems. Parent Aware, there's the National Association for Family Child Care. There's NECBA, that's the National Early Childhood Program Accreditation. There's COA, Council of Accreditation. And if you don't want to join an accreditation system, you can do your own system at home, right? In your own program. You could start with licensing rules and regulations and maybe look at the basics. Partner with your licensor or your health consultant. Find out, look at back at your past notes, your past citations, and see what is our program not been able to grasp yet? What do we still need to work on? You can create focus groups or committees. So when we first opened, we took the learning standard or the standards from accreditation and we assigned them to individuals or teams. So we had a couple of folks that were on the health and safety committee, and they brought some really great stuff to us that we wouldn't have noticed otherwise as they were going through the health and safety, maybe licensing rules or accreditation standards. And that changed some of our practices that we did in our program. And that also created buy-in. They were on board, right? Because the teachers were part of that work. So if you don't consider accreditation or I went on the wrong slide, didn't I? I'm talking about accreditation, but I'm on policies and procedures slide. So I'm on this one. But there are also other tools that you can use for reflection. So one of our programs achieved 4 stars. And so now we were ready to tackle something else. And in partnership with St. Paul Schools, we are doing cello observations. And if you don't know what cello is, that's a literacy assessment for childhood programs. So you can look at all ages, infants through preschool. And we do it in partnership. So 2 administrators or St. Paul School staff and one of us go into classrooms, do an observation, and then give the teachers their feedback. And they can set goals from that, for their professional development. So you can choose your own tool. I'm going to go back to the slide on policies and procedures. Just thinking about how your policies and procedures were developed, your family handbook, your employee handbook. The big question is, do your teachers have access? Can they provide feedback and input? So every October, we revise our policies and procedures. I get input from our health consultant, our licensors, any citations that we've had, anything that parents have brought up, like one year they brought up screen time. So we revised our policy on screen time. We really looked at parent and staff surveys. What are parents asking? What are teachers asking for? And then we use that to update and revise our handbook. And then we sent those back out. And our handbooks are accessible to the staff. They're in the classrooms. We also include licensing policies and procedures, risk reduction plan, bloodborne pathogen, anything that they need to have access to, family handbook, parent handbook, it's all in one big binder so they can access that at any time. And we created our policies and procedures so that each policy is on one page. So if we need to update a policy, we don't need to change the page numbers and everything. We can just take out that page and put a new one in. So those are just little things that you can do to really make sure that you're including your staff in that program culture too as well. All right, how are we doing on time? Got a few more minutes?
10
All
more
right.
minutes.
All right. So once you've done some investigating on your program and you've looked at, maybe you've done some surveys or use some evaluation tools, you can create a program goals and action plan. And one of the things that our program did is we just took all the areas, so health and safety, education, curriculum and assessment, parent communication, facilities, all of that. And then we made a bunch of goals in each area. And then we talked about who could be involved, who can help, who's passionate. So if I have somebody who's really passionate about family involvement, one of my staff members, they can be part of that, that goal setting and part of the action plan. One of our examples I put on here is our goal was to really get all of our classrooms implementing family style meals. And so when you think about what does that look like for steps? Maybe we have to conduct an initial training. Maybe some of us have to go in and model how that can be done with the different age groups. Maybe I have to ensure that we have the proper utensils and bowls and serving supplies. And I also have to get my cook on board. If that means more dishes or more work, they need to be on board as well. So think about all the people that it impacts and how they can help and who's part of that action plan. All right, infamous budget and finances. This was another good chapter in the book. And have you guys ever watched the show, was it The Prophet? the prophet with Mark Lemonis. I don't know. He always said, know your numbers, right? And I'll say, no matter what your role is as a director, whether you're part of the finance or developing the budget, you still should have an idea of how budgets work, and the ups and downs of your center and how that will go. For example, in our program, we just had a bunch of children leave to go off to school in kindergarten. And so that dropped our income a little bit, quite a bit actually, because we had a big group this year, quite a bit for the month of September. And we didn't have as many coming in as we usually had, which was kind of weird. So we had to think about that. Now we were getting ready to hire another staff, but now we just lost 10 kids. That's one staff member. Where can we move people around so that we didn't have to make that other hire? And so just being smart with your budget and your plan helps you, accomplish some of your goals. So if I would have hired that other staff member, I might have missed out on an opportunity to use that money, maybe to give the next pay increase or to get some extra supplies for fall. Identifying your revenue and expenses. And a lot of times we don't think about fundraising or grants as a source of revenue. People get kind of fixated on the tuition. And then develop your financial policies and procedures. If you're part of that, I could tell you a story. I know we're running out of time, but when I was a director in my first time directing, the director had gotten fired on a Friday and they wanted me to go in on Monday. I went in over the weekend and the office was full of like checks all over the place. Like, what's going on here? And I come to find out that the director had been writing checks out to herself, embezzling funds, and there were no checks and balances system. So in one system, she was writing out that the vendors were getting paid the food and the health insurance and the phones. And then the bank system showed that the checks were all going to her. There was no accountability. And so I learned from that experience that when I set up my own program, I needed to have that accountability, that system in there, so that people couldn't enter a cash payment and then pocket the cash because it's tempting, right? So you had to develop sound financial policies or procedures. Again, a financial management system like ProCare. And then monitor your budget on a weekly or monthly basis. Know your cash flow. You need to plan for the unexpected. You need to plan for that month where you have 3 payrolls instead of 2. So fundraising. So before you jump into the world of fundraising, you have to consider a few things. So your demographics or program community. When I opened my first program 10 years ago, most of my families were childcare assistants, low income. It would not have been appropriate for me to do a whole lot of fundraising activities with that demographic. Or I needed to come up with fundraising activities that solicited more of the community in a different way. Somebody needs to take charge and organize, keep on top of things, and then have a clear purpose and goal, right? So right now we have been doing fundraisers. We've been having little sales on the weekend, getting rid of all of the extra stuff in our storage unit with the purpose of creating a nature playground at our newest location. And so that has some educational value, right? So children are going to benefit. So that's an easy way to explain that to people, why we're raising money. But if I was raising money to purchase a new refrigerator, people might not get the buy-in to why that's important. And also thinking about the timing. You don't want to do a fundraiser right after you raise tuition or a picnic in the fall, right? So making sure that you're timing your fundraisers appropriately. And then keep the families involved and informed. They want to know what's happening. Where is that money going? All right, so I see we have about 5 minutes left. This is the great topic, staffing. And I think I'm going to save this for next time. We can kind of talk about that. But I wanted an enrollment. So we have a few things that we can go. So I want to just finish up with some resources. So there's an opportunity for you to sharpen some of your skills, right? So Childcare Aware of Minnesota, in partnership with MNACE, is offering the director's credential through Eager to Learn. And Chrissy, you remember who did they email about that for more information?
Yeah, at Eager to Learn, that would be, and I'll put it in the email, but it's ETL support, at childcareawaremn.org.
Yep. And MNACE is offering the Leadership Journey series. It's happening, it's a cohort that meets in person and virtually, and that starts October 19th. So you can go to MNACE for professionals and learn more about that. And then First Children's Finance is a great, if you want to learn about more about marketing or finance or things like that, they have great sessions, and those start in the first sessions for fall starts on the 18th, so coming up soon, but you can go to their website as well and learn more about those opportunities. Nikki's going to send out Christy's going to send out the PowerPoint, and all of these were resources that were listed in the book. Many of these I have in my resource library. That Director's Toolbox is a great series. The Visionary Director is another one. But the book also had a lot of articles and other things that you can, short, quick articles that you can find online as well. So I have a little bit of homework for everybody before you go. So in October, we're going to meet. So sign up for October 20th session. And then we're going to go over what we didn't finish today, staffing, enrollment, and marketing. And then we'll hit on these issues. And then my reflection question, if you join us next time, what is the one piece of advice, a resource, or a tool that you would share with a new director? So what's your favorite tidbit? So if you can start thinking about that, I think that would be a great way to start off our next session. All right, and I'll turn it back over to you, Christy.
Sounds great. Thank you so much. Yeah, like Angela said, I'm going to go ahead and, as usual, send out our recap email in the next few days. Angela, if you wouldn't mind just sending me a bulleted list of those. I think we're going to do 6 topics then in part 2.
Yep.
If you could just send those to me quick, I'll make sure that those are included in our marketing email for participants for the registration for next month. Oh, I see a question here. Oh,
Yeah,
and
about
Lori's
fundraising.
planning to purchase the book. And then Danielle has a question. With fundraising, does it go towards your center? I'm not sure I can do that within home.
It counts as income for most types of programs. So I would talk to your accountant or whoever does your taxes, but when we enter our fundraising, it counts as additional income.
Great, thank you for that. All right, does anyone have any other questions or comments before we sign off for today?
Yes, thank you, everyone. I felt like we didn't get to cover so much, so I'm looking forward to part 2.
Yes, we are too. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll look forward to part 2. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. Take care.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.